be really frustrating when we know what's good for us. We have the tools in order to implement action that will change our habits or create new habits and behaviors in order to do more of what's good for our physical health, our mental wellness, nutrition, anything and everything in terms of longevity or just living comfortably and in a positive state predominantly most of the time. And yet we just don't do what we know is good for us. Sometimes we look at the things that we're doing that we know is out of alignment with these goals, with what we're saying we want to manifest or achieve in terms of health. And we're going to talk about physical, mental well-being. When we think of these things that we're not able to be consistent on in terms of habits, maybe, for example, we're trying to get into the habit of not snacking throughout the day, or we're trying to get into the habit of walking or working out or moving our body at least 5 times a week. Who knows? Everyone's goals in terms of their physical well-being is different. Maybe we're wanting to form a habit of meditating daily. And the thoughts are nice, like, yeah, I'm going to do that today. But the old saying goes, old habits die hard. It feels like we're failing on ourselves. It makes us feel weak. It makes us feel like, why can't I just do this? It makes us feel like we are lacking self-integrity. That's what we're going to talk about today. Self-integrity. Because I noticed that it's really easy, for the most part, for many people to do what they say they will do when it comes to their friends or family obligations or work obligations. Like, some people will literally work themselves to death on getting a project done or meeting a deadline in terms of their work or business or anything really. Yet we will sacrifice our being, put ourselves on the back burner, and show a lack of integrity when it comes to our well-being. So this episode, we're going to talk about self-integrity. And more so, we're going to get into a little bit about the brain. Disclaimer, I am not a neurologist. Let me put that out there. But we're going to talk about that because the more we understand how our brain works, and we can kind of start to connect the dots in terms of like why it can be hard to change certain habits, the better chance we give ourselves of being able to change those habits. Hi, welcome to the You Are Limitless podcast. I'm your host, Madam Chiko, or Chico Nowicki, coming to you from the holistic wellness space as a spiritual transformational life coach. And it is so great to have you guys here on another episode on YALL. And if you're just not tuning in, I am so glad to have you with me on my journey on the show and having me a part of your journey. You are welcomed and loved unconditionally here. This is my way of bringing psychology, metaphysical concepts, universal law, as well as my own story of extreme limitations due to abuse, drug abuse, and being a justice impacted individual, meaning I've been to jail, into the light so that you too can learn how to let go of what doesn't serve you, us, and start to incorporate more of what's part of our truth. So I'm always excited about getting into our vortex, raising our vibration, and discovering more of who we truly are by letting go of those limiting, yucky, negative beliefs that keep us from our truth. I have another episode on habits, and it's one of the earlier episodes. And we can kind of call this a part 2, but this is kind of a different flavor. And we're going to talk about self-integrity in its different forms on the next episode. It may not be the next one coming up, but it will come up in terms of guilt and shame. So just know that's a little sneak peek. So habits, right? A lot of people struggle with staying consistent with habits, and we're going to talk about why this can be the case. Also, with not compromising on our self-integrity, and why also that is probably one of the most important things in terms of how you show up in reality. Because whenever you are in your center, right, you've awakened yourself, you're in your center, you will naturally, when this becomes a new norm, do things, operate on a higher vibratory level. And it would not be so hard getting things done, incorporating into new habits and having it stick. So we're going to talk about just a little bit about how the conditioning works in terms of the habit and why sometimes it can be so hard to change and what we can also do about that and where we really want to focus on that self-integrity. Because if we don't have the self-integrity, I mean, we're not going to stick to whatever it is that we say we're going to stick to. So, habits. And let me just give you some examples from my life, because one thing is I did not like exercising. I did not, okay? I was coming off of drugs and exercising was just a nah, like never was into it. But one thing I was really adamant on was healing, because I knew that something had to give. My way wasn't working. Okay. The overeating was great. It served this purpose in terms of whenever I first got clean from drugs. And, I've been starving myself for so many years that food was like, oh yeah, I forgot that I had taste buds and this is awesome. But then I overdid it, right? Oh, lost I don't even know at this point, a lot of pounds. But it didn't start off that way. Repetition was key. And I talk about repetition a lot in terms of anything that we're doing that we want to solidify into our brain. So let's talk about the brain. I'm not a neurologist, but I'm really fascinated with the brain. And if I wasn't going to law school, you bet your butt I would probably be going into the field of neurology, because our brain is such a fascinating computer. It's the first computer, in my opinion. And it's really cool. You can actually kind of see the model of computers and how it's modeled after the human brain. And we see this in AI and all that good stuff. Not here to talk about that. But let's talk about how there's parts of your brain that's not connecting the wants and the desires into the habits. There's a lag, or there's a disconnection. There's this concept of whole brain activation. We're not going to get into it because it's too much. I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. So you have the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, or the conscious brain and the subconscious brain. Your conscious brain roughly runs about 40,000 processes a day. Not anything compared to the subconscious brain, where it's running millions of processes. I think it's 40 million a day, something like that. And the goal is to be able to talk to the subconscious brain. That's what we want, because you can tell your conscious brain something on repeat, but if your subconscious brain, if it's not seeping into there, then that's why it's not habit. Your conscious brain is basically running the show in terms of the unconscious thoughts. You're just thinking all these random thoughts. You're not really conscious of what's going on, but your subconscious brain is the one that is guiding you into this world. It's helping you breathe, right? It's telling you when it's time to take a breath. It helps you with your digestion. It's helping you with your bodily functions. It's why you don't have to remember how to drive a car or remember how to ride a bike. It's why once you learn a language, that's that. You're not going to forget the language unless there is some type of traumatic injury to the brain or some type of disease that causes, again, just traumatic injury. It is the subconscious that is able to run all these programs in the background on repeat so that your conscious brain isn't using all of its energy trying to remember the programmings. When we're young, from age 1 to 7 or 8, we get all these downloads coming in. Our brain is in what is called a theta brainwave state. In that, this state is very receptive to receiving information from our external environment. This is a very learnable stage, right? Where you're just kind of taking everything in. You're not able to decipher necessarily what's good, bad, right, wrong, except for what's being told to you. This is why sometimes you can pick up your parents' bad habits or even good habits. We'll talk about this later on, I'm sure, because I love talking about this. I love studying the multifaceted nature of the subconscious brain and being able to connect metaphysical concepts, quantum physics, to neurology, psychology as well. And you can really see, man, knowledge is power, okay? Lack of knowledge is disempowerment. So you get programmed very easily in this theta brainwave state. And then from there, unless there's some type of interrupt, you're going to keep running these same programs. You can think, oh yeah, I know that exercising is great, or that watching too much TV may not be great for my eyes or even for my mental health. But it's one thing to say that you know something, but then it's another thing to actually know with the capital K, and you know it in the form of your behavior and your reactions. That's why there could be a disconnect, because there's not a conversation going on between the conscious brain and the subconscious brain. And the disconnect can come from the belief systems. So this is where beliefs can kind of come in and shut out the connection. Now, it would never fully shut it out, but if your belief systems are strong enough, then it gets hardwired into the subconscious brain. So let's go back to the conscious brain and the thoughts. Let's say you have a lot of like negative thoughts, or maybe like anxious thoughts, or thoughts of like, I can't do this. I'll never stay consistent. Thoughts like that. And this works both ways in terms of positive thoughts. When you think the same things over and over again consciously, that becomes a belief. And then that belief gets hardwired into your subconscious brain. Now your brain is wired in a certain way. This is why it's so important to become the conscious creators of your reality. Otherwise, you're programming yourself unconsciously without realizing what you're telling yourself. I have an episode on the stories that we tell ourselves, a few, but also watch what you say to yourself. It's like episode 2. Because what you tell yourself truly is what goes. So if you're telling yourself the same thing, and also really important, repetition, because that is how the brain learns, is through repetition. You didn't get into the car once upon a time and just learn how to use, drive. You had to practice. It's the same thing with anything. But whenever you're telling yourself the same things on repeat, the same disempowering things, just like with habit, it becomes a habit. And I mention all of this because I want you to not look at some of the things that you prefer you didn't do as a moral failing on yourself. It's just programmings that need to be tweaked up, that some need to be let go of. And this is why we're here. It's to let go of the beliefs that don't serve us, of the limitations that keep us from our truth, so that we can embody the idea of limitlessness. So you take a deep breath in, like, it feels good to know that this doesn't, negate responsibility, but it feels good to know that part of this is it's just these programs. You're just operating on programs that are out of alignment with who you say you want to be and who you are capable of being. And the more you know about how this works, the easier it can be to start to work with your biology, neurology, psychology, spirituality. You start to work with these in order to attract, in order to manifest, in order to incorporate who you say you want to be. And you can do that right now, today, in this moment, because every moment you are a totally different person. So you get to choose who you want to be. And this is where you can start to implement self-integrity, because now, being a conscious creator, you can consciously tell yourself that I am a person. And this is where mantras come in. Mantras are really great because mantras are here to try and convince you of whatever it is that you're wanting to do so that you don't need them anymore. Because when you're doing mantras, you're repeating, you're training the brain to be different, to learn differently, to see itself differently. You notice that you're shit talking yourself? Yeah, well, let's tell ourselves a different mantra, because that would be what I call negative mantras. You got these negative mantras humming in the background, like a background app. That's what's going on. So you may have a mantra saying that, let's say you went to the gym. And I'm just using the gym as an example, since that seems to be a really difficult one in terms of consistency for many people. But let's say you made it to the gym, you're like, yes, I did it. Heck yeah. And then afterwards, you already have this belief of, will I be able to do it tomorrow? That's a negative mantra humming in the background, because one, now you're creating anxiety about, will you do it tomorrow? Takes you out of the present. So cool to be able to connect all this. We want to stay present. We want to stay in the moment. So you have this belief of, I may not be able to do it tomorrow. Law of attraction, okay? This is where the law of attraction comes in. Because now you're vibrating at this weird vibratory level of, I may not be able to do this tomorrow. In order to rewire your brain. And there are many ways to do this, but you want to get into that place of theta brainwave, by the way. You do this through meditation, hypnosis as well, but get into a place of just stillness and peace. And you start to just release. If you notice thoughts come up, you release. It doesn't take that long to get the process started, okay? If you were to sit for just 15 minutes a day and meditate, you have no idea just how much you are doing for your brain, for your well-being, for your mental health, spiritual health, etc., etc. But you can start talking to your brain. Start talking to yourself in a positive way. I am a person who works out. I am abundant. Whatever it is that you're wanting to make habitual. Here's the kicker. You talk in present tense. Whenever you are doing these things, whenever you are meditating, whenever you are working out, whenever you're trying to attract more money, whatever it is, whenever you're trying to stick to what you say you will do for yourself. By the way, if you're able to do this with other people, you 100% could do it for yourself. You're just taking a skill set that you already have and you're applying it to yourself. I think that people think it's humble and it's like, oh wow, look at him sacrificing himself for his children and blah, blah, blah. I heard that growing up. Look at all the sacrifice I made for you guys and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, why sacrifice your being whenever you can be a whole person, a whole being, working from a higher state of being without having to, overwork yourself, compromise on your health, compromise on your spiritual health, deplete your soul essentially, because you're not nourishing yourself with the habits, with the meditation, with anything that you're really wanting to be of. You have to talk in the present tense. Okay. And I kind of lost my train of thought, but it's okay. Maybe I'll go back to it. Maybe that was it. But when you speak in the present tense, because everything's here and now, then you are putting yourself at the vibratory level to be able to be that person that can get it done. Let's say that you're saying, I want to work out tomorrow. I want to work out tomorrow. I want to work out tomorrow. All you're really saying is, I want. That is its own state of being. Okay. This may be hard to kind of wrap your mind around, but wanting is its own state. So you're projecting this mantra to the universe of I want for a tomorrow that doesn't even exist, as opposed to I am a person who works out. I am a person who's abundant. I'm a person who holds herself true to what she says she will do. I'm a person who is healed. I'm a person who is, do you see what I'm saying? There's a difference. And as I was saying that, I felt powerful. And sometimes it can feel a little icky whenever you do start off saying these mantras and you don't believe it. So if you notice that you're feeling a little bit icky from the mantras that you do start saying or the actions you're doing, it's because it's not yet hardwired into the brain. But do it for 30 days consistently. Don't give up on yourself. Just like at the gym, just because you don't see results the first 3 times you go doesn't mean to give up. Or in business, just because someone tells you no during a sales call, don't give up, because 10 no's and 1 yes is still a win. So you keep doing that. But if you notice that there's an ickiness, that's because there's a disconnect. The subconscious, that's not a program the subconscious understands yet. So the goal is to get the subconscious to understand it. We let go of the old programmings, we incorporate the new. Self-integrity is so important, because without that, you're just running on autopilot. You're catering to everybody else but you, if you're even doing that. You're letting yourself go on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level that really is kind of disrespectful to you. This is why you hold the self-integrity. Self-integrity, when you say that you're going to do something. Now, let's say, for some reason, you say that, oh, I'm going to do this, and you don't do it. The opposite of self-integrity is not judgment. Okay? So that's the other thing, is you can't judge yourself. You can't force yourself into change. You can't judge yourself into change. I mean, you can. And there are many people that do this. But then you get those toxic influencers I don't like talking about our toxic masculinity or what have you, but we see this a lot in certain influencers. I will not say names, where they will portray this toxic masculinity. You gotta grind and you're a bitch of blah, 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 blah. And you guys may know who I'm talking about. There's quite a few. And it creates this judgment and so much just negative energy. Oh, it's just so icky. That isn't the way to sustain change. And it is not conducive to growth on multi-dimensional levels. Okay, when you're talking like that or you're listening to people like that, I'm just telling you right now, that is not the way to go. Okay, because then you're judging and you're beating yourself up and you're closed off, you're limited. That is not how you implement change. And some of these people who do speak like this, I mean, they're set up in a penthouse making millions, if that, for a person who's not there yet and they're listening to that. Man, what a hard road ahead if that's who you're listening to. So, that's just all my opinion. I personally just don't agree with that type of masculinity because there's a softness. There's a softness, but firmness that can be had with masculine energy that's beautiful, that's creative, that's harmonious with feminine energy. And all that toxic masculine energy is not it. Maybe we can have a conversation about that another time because that just came to me and I'm just like, dang, okay, yeah, absolutely. Because we got to put a stop to that if possible. That's why, this is the age of information, but some of the information, you got to be really careful. Be aware of what you're consuming. And if it feels judgy, if it just feels off, don't listen. Just don't listen. There are better, more holistic ways to go about healing and evolving and attracting the habits that you want, incorporating everything that you need to succeed as you define it. So lack of self-integrity is not judgment. Okay, you're still being kind to yourself. You're still showing up for yourself. You're still telling yourself that you can do this and you will continue doing this. Hardwire it into the brain. This is why we discussed the brain just a little bit, because this is why you're able to say, yeah, well, I know that it's good for me, but then your actions aren't speaking it because the subconscious is still running some programs that are a little rusty. They're outdated. They need to be updated, just like a computer needs to be updated. So be kind to yourself as you go on this journey. And I am more than happy to be there with you. Thank you guys so much for this episode, letting me share my thoughts, opinions on habits, the conscious brain, the subconscious, as well as self-integrity, because I get it. I absolutely get it. And I hear it all the time. Like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And it's really cool to let you guys know, like, you don't have to resort to this idea of like, I'm a failure, I'm morally failing, or whatever it is, in terms of having a negative perspective, because it just attracts more of that negative energy that'll get you to stay where you're at. I am always excited about getting into alignment with you guys. It's just been so much fun and I'm so grateful. And I hope this episode resonated with you. But if not, if you could just do me a favor and still share this with someone, like this, follow, subscribe, because you don't know how many people you can help just by sharing, and you're helping the algorithm perform better and you're helping a sister out, get the word out, because it's all love here. I come from love, non-judgment, nothing, but in love for your journey, for my journey. And so let's continue on the journey on how to show up more authentically for ourselves, more authentically for the people around us. But it starts with us. It starts with us doing what we say we're going to do. It has nothing to do with proving anything to anybody else. Thank you so much. You already know about my coaching program. You already know about my group, my women's group. Always reach out. My links are in the show notes. You can DM me at Madam Chiko. And it's just so wonderful. I just want to thank you guys so much for just being so supportive of me, showing me so much love, and wanting to learn more about my story and what brought me to this place, and just learning from me. I can't tell you how grateful I am for this, and also for your questions, because the Q&As are wonderful. I am so grateful that just getting a really good response, and it just keeps growing. And that's, just such a blessing in disguise that I could have never imagined, because I try to not have expectations. And it just feels really good to be a part of the New Earth healers, raising the collective consciousness of the earth so that we can create a more harmonious place to live. Thank you so much. So grateful for you. And I'll see you next week on You Are Limitless, y'all.